But I'm actually, when it comes to education, I'm not particularly keyed into the trans sports issue. I'll tell you what I'm keyed into: the school closures in 2020. Because the school closures in 2020 were a catastrophe, and they were a foreseeable catastrophe. And Democrats as a party have to own the fact that we as a party largely supported them, despite the fact that by May of 2020, the evidence was quite compelling that they were unnecessary and indeed harmful. That is the education issue we should be talking about.
David Pakman brought on a liberal onto his show, and I'm sure David Pakman expected this to be one of these woke slurp fests where everybody just trashes on Donald Trump and says he's a threat to democracy, ha ha ha, and they all just laugh and, you know, kumbaya and all that stuff. But it wasn't that at all. In fact, this liberal that David Pakman brings on went after David Pakman and his entire worldview, and went after the woke cult and the Democrats in general quite a bit more than David Pakman even thought he would. And you could tell by the reaction that David Pakman gives that Pakman was very shocked at what this guest said and what this guest did. Let's get into this clip here on the David Pakman show, where this guest goes on David Pakman, and like I said, David Pakman, I'm sure, expected this to be just another left-wing slurp fest, and it was not that whatsoever. Let's get into this clip here.
It's great to welcome to the program today Congressman Jake Auchincloss, representing Massachusetts, serving on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. It's so great to have you on today. You know, I'm really curious, as we record this interview, the Dow down nearly 900 more points, tariffs going one way, retaliatory tariffs already coming back, reports from the former Social Security Administrator that it's conceivable that payments will be delayed. It's not a reduction in benefits, but just from a logistical standpoint, because of what DOGE is doing, it's conceivable payments might be delayed. What is the totality of how you're interpreting what was sold to us as a sort of populist revival for the middle class by the current president that seems to be working out to be very bad for the average American?
Donald Trump is talking a good economy into a recession. He's doing so, one, by directly raising costs on the middle class. The middle class is going to see home insurance, car insurance, and health insurance costs spike by double digits over the next 18 months because of the tariffs, because of expirations for temporary protected status workers who make up a bulk of the healthcare and construction workforces, and because of the general uncertainty that he is pumping into the global economic system. The other thing that Donald Trump is doing is that he is making the United States harder to invest in and create jobs in for big businesses. I was recently talking to a prominent local manufacturer in Massachusetts who was saying that, so he manufactures basically intermediate parts for bigger businesses that they use in end products. And he was saying that the end demand for the product that he makes is as good as ever. And yet for the first time in 5 years, his order book is thinning out. And the reasons it's thinning out is that these bigger businesses are looking at the global macro environment and they're starting to tighten up. They're tightening up their orders to their own suppliers. They're tightening up on their own hiring decisions. And that cascades across the economy such that this local manufacturer now has pushed pause on some hiring decisions that he was going to make. And you don't have to be an economist to see where this takes us. The animal spirits get depressed, and all of a sudden, what was a strong economy, both in terms of job creation and investment going into 2025, becomes a very soft economy that can tip into a recession.
What do you make right now of...
And as you can see, this is starting out as these conversations normally do on David Pakman's show. It's crazy because you guys like watching David Pakman videos, so I'm always on the lookout for David Pakman debates, and he doesn't intentionally get into many debates anymore. Like it's almost like he's trying to hide from them. I'm not saying that he is, but it's almost like he's trying to hide from them. And he only really gets into debates with people unintentionally, like this one, or he'll bring on somebody who he's very obviously, you know, more informed on, he's smarter than, his IQ's higher than. He'll bring on those people and debate them. But this guy, it was kind of like an unintentional debate that you could tell David Pakman didn't really see it coming. And at first, everything started off as you'd expect, but then whenever David Pakman digs even more, this guy just starts going off and off and off. And David Pakman's just kind of there stuck, just not knowing what to say.
The fact that, similar to the Tea Party movement of 2010, there seems to be a contingent of voters that's voting for candidates whose policies actually will hurt them. You know, in 2010 with the Tea Party, you had folks who statistically were never going to be very wealthy. supporting a movement that overtly said, we want to cut taxes on the rich. Now, the analysis then was maybe some of them believe they too one day will be rich, as statistically unlikely as that is, given the reality of income mobility. On the other hand, there was the idea that some of them believed that when you give a tax cut to the rich, it, quote, trickles down in this now long debunked economic theory. What do you make of it in 2020, the 2024 election, now 2025? How did this party and Trump specifically secure the support? If you look at some of those states that Biden won, that Harris lost, what was it that got them to support this package of policy ideas?
If you enjoy content like this, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out a ton. Let's get back to the video.
Donald Trump is a cultural statement. He's not an economic manager. He was put in as someone who would destroy a system that many Americans felt alienated from. And it's much easier and faster to destroy things than it is to build things. So Democrats have a series of challenges ahead of us then, knowing what he is, that he is someone who, frankly, bested us in the culture wars between 2020 and 2025. One, we've got to recalibrate our own approach to sociocultural issues. Two, we've got to play defense to protect the Constitution and the rule of law against his depredations. But three, and I would argue most importantly, we have to become the party that voters trust on the economy. And right now, bluntly, we're not. That means that we have to draw a sharp contrast for voters going into the midterms, that his chaos and corruption are raising their costs. It's raising their cost of home insurance, of car insurance, of health insurance, of utility bills, of home ownership. But two, going into the presidential primary of 2028, that we as a party have big ideas for how to lower the cost of housing, of healthcare, and how to improve the delivery of education. And that's where I want to spend the bulk of my time, is being someone who can generate some of those ideas for Democrats to then mold into fine pottery going into the...
You know what I find really funny about this? It's about to come to the end of this, just trashing on Trump thing that they always do. But it's so funny how whenever people would go on David Pakman's show or Destiny show or any of these people's shows, and they would complain about Joe Biden and the inflation and the cost of living and everything going up, all the Democrat argument was, oh, that's not just on the president. The president can't control the economy like that. The president doesn't control inflation or gas prices. And now Donald Trump's in office, and all of a sudden it's like these tariffs, they're making the cost of living go up. People are paying more for groceries and all this stuff. And it's like, but I thought that the president couldn't control that. I thought that wasn't the president's fault. What happened to that argument? It's so funny, man. Now, none of them have any morals or principles or care about the well-being of the country at all. It's all just, how can we win? What do we have to say to make us look the best so that we can win? That's it. That's all these people care about. And yeah, winning is important, but winning is only important whenever winning means that you get in place what you actually want in place. The thing is, these people don't care about anything except for winning. That's it. That's why they're always talking about strategy. They're always like, we got to change our strategy. When Republicans lose, we don't say, we got to really change our strategy here, guys, because it's not a strategy. For a lot of, there's definitely Republicans out there that only care about winning, of course. But for me, whenever we lose, I'm not thinking, man, I really got to change my strategy up and stop really pushing these Christian beliefs that I have. That doesn't happen, because I'm not going to change my morals and my principles because we lost. That doesn't, like, the input does not change because of the output. The input's always going to be the same, right? But for these Democrats, it's fluid. It's completely fluid. They don't have any morals or principles, so it just changes. Whatever they want to change it, they just change it because they don't have anything. They don't follow any sort of spiritual guidance or anything like that. It's just whatever they feel in the moment is right. That's just what they act upon. It's really strange.
The presidential campaign.
I want to talk through with you the socio-cultural aspect, which I agree Democrats have failed on. I recently interviewed separately Senators Booker and Schiff, and they both agreed that on issues like the what is a woman gotcha question, or this is to quote the way they talk about it, men in women's sports, dismissing it outright does come off as we don't care about something people say they care about. At the same time, we recognize that these are contrived issues to a degree, at least in terms of scale, and successfully so, as you point out. Donald Trump successfully did it. Can we workshop, how would you approach addressing these issues when someone brings them up in a way that's not dismissive, but does pivot to something that is far more tangible, like, for example, the economic issues that we're talking about? How do you respond to, what about, do you agree with, quote, men and women's sports? Like, how do you diffuse it?
Mike Pence, before he was a politician, was a radio host, and he used to have this statement, I'm a conservative, but I'm not angry about it. And the analog for Democrats is, I'm a liberal, but I'm not condescending about it. I am not going to shy away from being a strong advocate for gun safety legislation. I believe in climate action. I believe in civil rights for our LGBT community. We can do those things while enlisting people into our viewpoint, as we did with marriage equality at the turn of the century, and not lecturing people about why they are somehow morally broken human beings. And I think Democrats actually don't give Americans enough credit for wanting to dig into the details on policy. The average American under 40 consumes 4 to 6 hours of audio, online, and text content every single day. David, obviously, you know this better than me. People want to hear a long form conversation, and happy to dig into trans issues in as they relate to sports, and why we can have a nuanced position on that supports sportsmanship and fair play and safety, but also allows our trans neighbors to pursue their definition of happiness. But I'm actually, when it comes to education, I'm not particularly keyed into the trans sports issue. I'll tell you what I'm keyed into: the school closures in 2020. Because the school closures in 2020 were a catastrophe, and they were a foreseeable catastrophe. And Democrats as a party have to own the fact that we as a party largely supported them, despite the fact that by May of 2020, the evidence was quite compelling that they were unnecessary and indeed harmful. That is the education issue we should be talking about. We need to go out to American voters and first of all say, we got this one wrong, and we're sorry about that. And secondly, here's how we're going to make it better, because goodness knows Donald Trump has no ideas about how to make this better. We are going to guarantee every single kid in this country who is behind grade level on reading, writing, or mathematics, one-on-one high dosage tutoring, which is the most evidence-driven type of educational intervention known to the public school education system.
I really like the fact that this guy said that, where he said, let's go take accountability for our mistakes. I don't really think they're a mistake. I think they knew the entire time that they weren't going to be effective. It was more about control. But regardless, good statement to make, and you could tell David Pakman was not expecting that at all. I do find it funny how I point this out all the time. You guys, if you watch this channel every day or often, you'll know that I point this out all the time, where every single time one of these Democrats tries to go against their own party, they always have to take jabs at Donald Trump at the same time. Like they can't ever just criticize their own party without throwing in some jabs at Donald Trump here and there, just so that they know they're not going to lose their entire voter base, because they're going to be like, they know that a lot of their, the brainwashed Democrats out there are listening and they're getting pissed off. So you throw in the little jab at Donald Trump, so they start fist pumping again. They're like, yeah, go get him. Go get Donald Trump. I like this guy. Bill Maher does it all the time. David Pakman does it all the time. And now this guy's doing it. It happens literally all the time. Like it's constant. Anytime somebody's criticizing the left, who is on the left, they always got to go after Donald Trump, throw some jabs in here and there. But I mean, he is right. And you don't see many Democrats calling that out and saying that we need to take accountability for that. It's kind of out of left field, and you could tell on David Pakman's face, it was out of left field. It wasn't really it wasn't going along with the question at all. It wasn't answering the question at all. It was a curveball that he threw. I like what he's saying. I wish he wouldn't throw the jabs at Donald Trump unnecessarily. It just makes you lose credibility, in my opinion. But I like what he's saying. It's kind of too late though, and it's not really a mistake. I think it was on purpose. It was a control tactic. But that's just me. Let's see what else he has to say.
And we're going to pay for it with a digital advertising tax on the social media corporations that have been making your kids miserable for the last decade.
Okay, and that sounds great. That sounds great and all. It's never going to happen. That sounds amazing. And that's great political speak. Once again, these people only care about getting elected. They only care about winning. They don't care about making the country a better place. It sounds great. Great political speak, We're gonna give all the kids who are behind in reading level one-on-one tutoring. And who's gonna pay for it? The social media, that's so random. The social media companies that have been making your kids miserable. It's pretty random. I like it though. I do like it. Don't tax the everyday American person more money for this. Tax the social media corporation. I like that. Never going to happen, though. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys think about this guy throwing a real curveball here at David Pakman. You could see it on his face that he was like, yeah, I guess. Like he had no choice but to nod along because it was such a curveball. He had no choice. It was correct. Are these things ever going to happen? I don't think so. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, though. What do you think about this whole David Pakman getting shocked on his own show by this guy really throwing him a curveball? Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this whole David Pakman versus this guest situation.